The following podcast contains opinions from paid professionals. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and not advice. For free and confidential support, call 1800 858 858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au.
So we think with a special Monday episode, and we will do this for the remainder of the Spring Carnival because we need to review everything that happened on Saturday, Benway, at Caulfield and at Rose Hill. Firstly, with the accountability check and your take on the Guineas.
Yeah, so broadsiding was the one that we'd both highlighted as the horse to beat, and I guess the market thought the same thing. As it turns out, that wasn't the case. In these races, you need to assert your dominance early. They didn't do that. You need things to go right. You could argue that didn't happen either. And you need the best horse. And I still think that broadsiding was the best horse in the race, but I'm less confident than I was pre-race about that fact. Onwards and upwards towards a Cox Plate, I hope. I reckon broadsiding will be in the race absolutely up to his eyeballs. I thought the run was way better than most people gave it credit, and maybe that was because I didn't have a big bet on him in the race. I feel as though a lot who did are sitting there lamenting the ride and lamenting the performance. You look at it, and it was a pretty good run.
Yeah, I did say last week as well, you know, the tiny query for me was Caulfield first time. And you can argue that maybe that was part of his undoing. We had a track on Saturday at Caulfield that did show big glimpses of having a leader's bias. I'm not sure that was, I mean, there was a lot of runners who obviously won from leading or being in the first four. But then we also had winners like Jimmy Star who were able to make ground. So it was fast. It was a good three, and that is typically what happens when it's that dry. It does favour on pace runners. Obviously, knowing that the fence was hot, James McDonald opted to snag back into there from the wide gate immediately. He rode for luck early doors and then thought, no, I don't want to get trapped behind something coming backwards on the fence, which is partially what happened with Tropicus in front of him. I'll go wide. He made up ground, but it just was all in vain. So I don't think you can take anything away from broadsiding going forward. Very hard to win a Golden Rose into a Caulfield Guineas. Only, I think, 3 have done it in the past. He's on track for the Cox Plate. Private Life, great ride by Damien Lane in the end to be able to judge conditions and to say, well, no, I'm going to lead up this field. I'm going to rate over the 1600 and Too Strong. And, you know, good result as well for the team at Coolmore and their partners in that particular colt by Written Tycoon. They spent a lot of money and they had a good day in the end. So
they did.
Yeah.
They did. We'll talk about the other aspect of their good day in 2 ticks. Just on the track, there are some trainers that refuse to send their horses to Caulfield, but it's got nothing to do with leader bias. They fear that when it gets into the good range and the firmer side of the good range, that horses jar up, don't handle it, and certainly don't recover well. I think that was as big a factor with some of the horses going there for the first time than it was the track itself. The one thing I'll say about broadsiding is probably didn't like it as firm as it was. There were a lot in that camp throughout the course of the day. And on James's ride, in hindsight, he may not do the same thing, but I genuinely believe if he settled off the fence and back, given where he would have been, he wouldn't have won anyway. In fact, I don't think he would have finished as close. I think it was the right call to find the fence. Circumstance just didn't suit from there. But not everyone will agree.
Yeah, so we had 3 Group 1s on Saturday. The Might and Power, Mr. Brightside. The track definitely wasn't to his liking. It was too firm for him on Saturday.
Well, he's another one that falls exactly into that basket. And now there is already talk about him at the distance and whether he handles it. I think he's run well enough against good horses at the distance to say he does run the trip, but now we can all agree he needs circumstance to do it.
Yeah, you need conditions to suit if you're going to round out the 2000. If not, he's a supreme 1600-metre horse. Deny knowledge. I mean, Mark Zara is not a front-running rider. Like, he's not known for that. That was a hell of a ride on that mare to be able to get the Group 1 for Yulong. He judged conditions and thought, well, we don't have Pride of Jenny in this. Mr. Brightside doesn't like it when it's fast run up front and there's no toe into the race. I'll turn it into a Pride of Jenny 2,000-metre test on this mare who does lead anyway. It was a masterstroke.
It was. And you know what? As much as we talk about the beaten favourites on that track, I think the other thing we need to factor in is the horses with no market expectation who ran well beyond that. And we saw that with the runner-up in the Guineas and a few other races. So I do believe there was significant advantage to be up and in, but it was the horses able to capitalise on that advantage who won the races. And how can you begrudge them that? If you watch historically, the horses that settle top four, they win races. The horses that settle back, they're rating stars, but they win less as a strike rate. And we just saw it again.
That's beautifully put, because you take out bad luck when you are settling in those first couple of pairs. You're right there. You're on speed. There's less trouble to overcome. You don't have to make up as much ground at the end of the races. It's pretty simple. So that's why, Gay Waterhouse, she's so well known for having her horses right there on speed. It makes you're just taking things out of the equation that can go wrong.
Well, the winner of the Guineas is not a leader, but versatile enough to lead and to win a race, whereas broadsiding doesn't have that versatility, and that makes it hard. And you know what? If we're talking about a Cox Plate, you need to be, if you're in there as a lightweight hope, history would suggest you need to be up there close enough, not necessarily up on speed, but close enough to the speed. Does he have the versatility to do that? We might find out in a few weeks. I hope he has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other big race at Caulfield on Saturday, which definitely grabbed our attention, and we gave him a push on the show. He was up against another Will who was very short in the market in that Turak handicap, was Antino. And wow, before we get to the ride, let's give the horse credit, because it was remarkable that he was able to sustain that gallop. He was in front for probably 1,000 of the end of the race, and he just did of the 1,600 metres, he did a remarkable job to sustain that speed.
He's sustained 800 metres worth of sprint. And like you look at the last two, it was sustained, and that's why the margin was so significant. This wasn't a matter of putting the race to bed and then fading late. That was a sustained run through the line. Huge by the horse, brilliant by the jockey, who, you know, myself and plenty of others have said how much we miss Blake Shin in Sydney because of his willingness, and maybe it draws the ire of the odd trainer, but his willingness to completely throw a spanner in the works. So often we have everyone come back and say, wasn't enough race pace for me to get into it. Race shape just didn't suit. But he was happy to say, you know what, race shape's not suiting, I'm back, we're walking, I'm about to go. You do need the right horse to do it, and you need the faith of trainers and owners that when it goes awry, they'll forgive you because they know that you get it right more often than not.
Yeah.
And not everyone has that luxury. You know, I'm hesitant to say, oh, Blake Shin, amazing, why don't more jockeys do this? There's one clear answer for that, instruction. And jockeys know that you need to ride to instruction or you'll get in strife. But Blake's just one of those that seems to buck the trend.
Yeah.
What did you think? It was a fantastic ride, and I believe you've been doing a little bit of a think.
I did do a little bit of a think, and it did get me thinking. I think now in the past 3 years, that might go into one of the top Group 1 rides of the last 3 years. And I'm only talking about the last 3 years because I'm dealing with recency bias.
Yeah.
But will you indulge me for 2 seconds?
Oh, well, I think you've allowed me the luxury of many a list over the years.
Top 5 Group 1 winning rides of the past 3 years. At 5, Tyler Schiller on Celestial Legend. The way he ducked and weaved down the straight and he took those gaps even though wide, but also for the fact that he had to get down to the lightweight. Doncasters are hard to win, but he did a marvellous job of it. At 4, Ben Melham on Cascadian in the Australian Cup, where he settled last and, again, found gaps in the field to not really have to go around too many horses. Quickest way home. Big duel at the end with Pride of Jenny, and he's such a tough, brave horse, Cascadian, to be able to pinch her on the line. At 3, I will put Shin on Antino in the Turak handicap. Extraordinary to be able to, on the fly, think, you know what? They're going too slow. I need to put myself into the race. I think I've got the horse to do it. Let's go. Let's go and sustain the gallop. At 2, Declan Bates, Pride of Jenny, Queen Elizabeth this year. Say no more. One of the most popular Group 1 rides I think we'll ever see because of the 30-length margin between him and the rest of the field at some points during the 2,000 metres. But number one has to go to the eccentric mind that is Nash Rawiller, the absolute brilliance of Nash Rawiller on Think It Over, again in a Queen Elizabeth when the track was wet. And I love the call from Darren Flindell. Oh, Nash is going to the outside rail. This is interesting.
Yeah. And, on a horse that had no record on wet tracks, had almost been dismissed purely for that fact, was the forgotten horse in the race. Categorically, absolutely number one for the recent couple of years. Just on a few of those, they do. The best aspect to them is capitalising on the complacency of some of their rivals.
And I think as well, these rides, particularly Nash on Think It Over, Deck on Pride of Jenny, and Shin on Antino, those top three, and they're just my top three, this is my opinion. It's also reading the day and reading conditions. So a lot of that, the plan 2 days out for Nash on Think It Over wouldn't have been to go to the outside fence.
No.
He's judged that on the day going, that's the best ground. That's dry that it is on the inside. I'm going to take a chance. That's what Shin did on Antino. And in a way, Pride of Jenny, that's her pattern to lead them up and to run them ragged. But he did it to a point that, again, wasn't expected. So it was the surprise element to those top three rides, in my mind, make them the best of the last 3 years in Group 1s. Speaking of Group 1s, we are getting into the Everest, $20 million Everest on Saturday, and boy, are we excited. The first time it is a Group 1. So I've invited a guest on the show. He's just finished at the Hawkesbury Trials and looks to be having a little bit of a coffee. Let's put our headphones on so we can have a chat to young Zac Lloyd, who will be riding Steffi Magnetica in the Everest on Saturday, his second ride in this great race. He rode Cylinder last year. And boy, is he a jockey in form.
He certainly is. Zac, great to have you on. So we think. It's been so good watching you take each and every step, and we know that you're one of the best in the business now. You had another good weekend, and we'll get to a couple of those. But we do appreciate you coming on first and foremost. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Thanks for having me on, guys. This is cool. I didn't know that I was getting the call up there. I'm just sitting here, just like I can just see myself, and it was a bit awkward. But hello everyone. Good morning.
If you know what, I would argue that's a dream. I sit and look at myself all the time. Hey, having a look at the weekend, you had Macarena where I think not much went right from wide gate, and then you had Ferrari where you're probably thinking at about the 200-300 that you might be in a bit of a pickle with the world back commodity. How do you kind of, if you haven't had things go right through the day or week or month, how do you kind of keep the confidence that gaps will open? If you play the percentages, you'll get your chance and you can put a race away?
Yeah, it's a bit tricky, and I must say, early on in my career, I probably struggled with that a bit. Like if I had two favourites early on get beat, I could feel myself losing myself throughout the day. And luckily, just having good people like my dad and Darren, they sort of always told me just one race at a time. If you have a good race, forget about it, on to the next. Or if you have a bad race, forget about it, on to the next. And I think that's some of the best advice I got. And on the weekend was testing me. Kovalica obviously ran really good, but second's not first. Macarena, nothing went right. And then to have an odds-on favourite at the end of the day, you've sort of got to keep your head a bit. And luckily it was good.
Hey, just before we push on, I do want to ask about Kovalica because it got my money for another
he's so frustrating,
another week.
Isn't he?
Hey, a few people are probably watching on thinking Zac's gone out and had a big night, after winning the last, and he's been punched in the eye. In actual fact, it was one of Greg Hickman's on Wednesday that gave you an almighty headbutt.
Did you get knocked out in the end, or you're right?
I didn't get knocked out, but I was all by it. Got me good.
And it was a pickup ride as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sam Clipperton knew something. He stitched me up there.
and then the funny part is, I think it was Tyler eventually was on once Zac was off, but then it got scratched anyway. Is that right? Or
yeah, the second horse I was on in race 2, Broadway Follies for Beyond Baker.
That's right.
And
yeah,
the doctor stood me down for a race just to see if I kept all sweet, and yeah, it got kicked behind the barriers. So I said to him when he got back, I said, "Mate, my horses are just cursed today. You don't want to ride them."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got no luck. Well, hopefully you do have a change of fortune when it comes to Saturday. Before we get to Steffi, you rode in the Everest last year as a young pup. I mean, you're still so young, but just explain to us when you're behind the barriers getting ready to load for an Everest, how loud was it? How much energy is there? How many butterflies are swirling around in the tummy? What's the feeling?
Yeah, it was incredible. I'm so excited for Saturday. It was a day, no other day compared to the Everest. Even I think race 2, I won on sequestered, and yeah, the roar, just the last 100 meters was insane, and that was only race 2. And as you said, behind the gates when they start singing that Sweet Caroline, you can hear it so vividly, and it's so cool. But obviously you got a pretty big job to do. But last year I was on cylinder. He drew well. I sort of knew how the race was going to pan out, so I wasn't too nervous behind the barriers because I thought I had a good plan, and the horse ran well. He ran 5th, but yeah, it was an amazing day. Very excited for Saturday.
Well, with that, I'm sure you've already played it out in your head, even though you don't know, where everyone's going to settle. If you could have a dream week, where would you jump? Where would you settle? And I think we all know where you would finish.
Yeah, I think the last part's probably the easy part, but I think this year it's much trickier because Cylinder was obviously an on pace runner, and I thought I'd be in the first 4, which makes your life as a jockey a lot easier.
Mhm.
But Steffi, she doesn't have as much tactical speed. Tomorrow, hopefully, can draw anything under 5 would be great. I think in a race that lacks a bit of tempo, a barrier draw is going to be very, very crucial just to pinch those 2 lengths more in the first 100 meters than um, a normal race. So anything under 5, if I can settle third pair, 1 out, and then bring it to the outside and let her go, I think that would be my ideal race.
All right, so Steffi gave you your first Group 1 up in Brisbane, and she, even though she's won a Group 1, I know this might sound silly, but she's a very progressive mare. Like,
Yeah.
she's won the Group 1, but you get the feeling that she could be a real big star of the future going forward. Tell me about the conversation with the boss when they locked in traffic ward and they said, so you locked for Steffi. How did that conversation play out? Because I'm sure they would have loved you to ride the lightweight on that colt.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good problem to have 2 very good choices in a big race like the Everest. Yeah, if that can happen every year, I'll be happy. But actually, in the beginning of the preparation, Bjorn sort of come to me and he said, "Look, we really want you to ride Steffi, but we're gonna have to lock you in for every race. Can you make that happen?" And she wasn't probably an Everest contender in other people's minds as the faith me and Bjorn have in her. So um, I proposed that to James, had a good chat with him, and he was more than happy. He said, "Obviously, we like you to ride our horses, but his words were, I can move the goalposts for her." So he sort of put the foundation there that wherever she goes, I will ride her. So when Traffic Warden was in the Everest, it was I didn't approach him or anything, but we sort of knew from the conversation we had prior that I would ride Steffi, and yeah, obviously Traffic Warden's a great chance, and Jamie Carr is a pretty good replacement.
It looks as though they have been amazing in allowing you to sort of branch out. And I know Darren's played a huge part, and I'm sure James has too in your development. But your relationship with Team Hawks seems to have grown, and you're getting opportunities there, and clearly a good one with Björn. Hey, on a Godolphin Galloper, lightweights, is there any hope that you would ride broadsiding if it goes to a Cox Plate, or is that more than likely to be Jamie?
Yeah, I'd probably have to say Jamie, just purely on the fact that experience wise in Melbourne, I think the team obviously I would be more than happy to ride broadsiding in a Cox Plate. I think he's a great ride, but
We weren't
I'm a bit of a
questioning that. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm a bit of a realist, and I understand that it's sort of different, and unless I go there a couple meetings before and just have some burnarounds, but obviously nothing fixed. I would love to ride him. The team knows that, and it's obviously James's call at the end of the day.
Mm.
What do you got coming up other than Steffi? So this Saturday, we know the card is just elite and it's full of races that every jock trainer, owner, and slot holder when it comes to those slot races, would love to win. Steffi, in the Everest, what other rides do you have at the moment? Of course, we're not done with acceptances yet, but I'm sure you've got a good guide.
Yeah, I've got a nice book, fortunately. I know Godolphin have booked me for the King Charles. I'm not sure which horses we have going there
Tom
at the moment.
Kitten.
I'm not sure because I don't know. Anyway, we'll find out.
You don't know. What are you saying?
That sounds like you do know.
No, I don't know. All I know, I'm booked for the race, but what horse it is, I'm not sure. I actually haven't spoken to my manager just yet about my ride, so I'm just sort of going with the flow.
Okay.
Sydney Stakes.
Airman.
Wonderful. Of course, he was brilliant 2 weeks ago at Randwick. In the Cosy, do you have a ride?
No, I was disappointing race that because I thought Clear Thinking was very, very good chance in that race, but she obviously got injured, so we might have to wait a year for her.
Yeah, has been a bit of a war of attrition, that race. A few have been falling by the wayside, but Front Page certainly looks particularly tough to beat. Hey, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind picking your brain just on James, but a different James McDonald. He's sitting on 99 Group 1s for a guy who's brought up 2. And I did chuckle when you, post-race, I think it was to you, Emma, he said, you don't get sick of this feeling. And I thought, well, of course you don't at 2. I don't think you do at 99 either, right? But
you were so calm after winning. I was actually really shocked. I mean, I've got a good relationship with young Zac, but when you won that first Group 1, you were just it was so beautiful. You were just so happy and emotional. And then I thought, second one, I still might get that little glimmer. You're too composed.
Oh, he's moved on.
I was actually devastated.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a good interview for Emma unless she gets a tear, so just keep that in mind.
Well, when we get to an Everest, I mean, whoever wins that Everest on the weekend, if I don't get any emotion, I will be as flat as a tack.
I think the Everest will be a different story.
Thank you.
Actually, you even got a cuddle from John Thompson the other week.
Yeah, we haven't addressed that, have we?
No.
My goodness gracious.
It was great to see that emotion from him, and it showed how important it was to have a youngster. Anyway,
but I tell you what, I'm sure Zac's seen that footage. I mean, he's on social media, but you could have given me 50 guesses as to who might have done that to me on a race day, and John Thompson wouldn't be in the top
No.
50. He's such a mild-mannered, lovely man.
But that's what made it so great.
No.
So nearly everyone, everyone within the 7 box out the back kind of watching on, and everyone's like,
did you just say that?
what just happened there?
I know.
What happened? Hey, anyway, we derailed.
Sorry.
So 99, can you believe that, that could be in the future, like that someone rides 100, that others have ridden 100, that one day, you've got something to aspire to that's there. It must feel like a million miles away at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just looking for my next one, not my next 97. But when you're James McDonald, and obviously he's worked very hard to get into the position he is every week, he's got the favourite, second favourite in Group 1. So it's a very it must be a good feeling and a good job to have.
Oh, that's in your future. Don't worry about it. I mean, you are the future of our sport, Zac, and in years to come, I have no doubt that you will be sitting on favourites and second favourites in Group 1s week in, week out. How many did your dad win in the end?
I think he won maybe 94, 95. Yeah.
Right, so you really only need 96.
If you get to 96, you may as well get to 100.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, it's been great to have you on, mate. We'll be cheering you on for what it's worth. I don't remember who Emma's was, but you were my jockey to follow through the spring when we did our.
I did see
show.
that.
Yep.
What did you say? I would have 3 Group 1s. Is it 3?
Yeah, well, you're leaving me hanging. You're a couple short. So
What did I say? I
Get
can't
your
even
move on.
remember.
I nearly got 2 in a day. I need 1 more or 2 more now.
all right, thank you.
You were
And
very
thank you.
close.
I'll owe you a drink because it'll be the first thing I get right this spring if you can do that.
Go get the arnica on that eye, mate, because if we're
Yeah.
doing post-race interviews on Saturday, you want to be looking pretty, my friend.
Yeah, I need to be looking a bit better. All right, thank you guys. Thanks
Take
very
care.
much for having me on.
Thanks, mate.
Zac Lloyd
Yes,
there,
thank
who
you.
rides Steffi Magnetica in the Group 1 $20 million Everest. And hasn't he come such a long way in the last couple of years, not only riding-wise, but media-wise as well.
Yeah, demeanor, everything. You can see he's started to get the swagger and the confidence, and they arrive on the scene as such young kids, and the opportunities the money, everything, it all comes so quickly. What I love about him, and not everyone has this luxury, is he's just got the best people around him. I mean, between his family, we've seen siblings riding so well. We've also seen Darren Beedman have a big role
Dizzy as
in
well
his
at
development.
Godolphin. Yeah.
Exactly. So, he couldn't have a better base to launch his career.
Can we flash back before we flash forward? Just a couple more things from the weekend, just been because they do play into our hands in the race meetings still to come. The Roman Consul, unbelievable win by Switzerland, who is back in a big way. What do you take out of that?
Would probably be my Coolmore selection for the Everest if I had a choice between Stormboy and Switzerland. So that's my takeaway, and I did not think I would be sitting here saying that. He was really impressive. It stacked up on the clock. I'm not convinced with Stormboy. I feel as though there's been plan A, B, and C. I would pay so much money to listen to the phone call as Coolmore rings Gaia Adrian to say,
We're not taking
we're
him.
not taking it. The whole dynamic fascinates me, and I'm sure they're all on great terms, but there's such a big prize at the end of this. And I tell you this, Stormboy on the weekend on a rail-friendly, leader-friendly Caulfield in a Guineas, my God.
Might have been a real live chance.
They've foregone that.
Yeah.
All things being equal, we don't know everything behind the scenes, but it appears that was their plan A. Well, plan A would have got them mighty close to winning.
Oh, I know.
So now they're not doing that. So if they don't get the Everest slot, and I thought Chris was quite savvy post-race comparing the Galloper to yes. I don't know that there are a stack of similarities beyond the fact that
They're 3-year-olds.
they're 3-year-olds and might both end up in an Everest. But I thought that was quite good of him.
It will all unfold today. And then in the gloaming, as we look towards the spring champion and possibly the Derby in Melbourne in a couple of weeks' time.
Where is your confidence now? Il Castello, absolutely
Huge.
fantastic.
Midway to that kind of grade, just enormous.
Swift Falcon, brilliant. And I can tell why the market would flip for a spring champion with Henline now based off that run. I thought they both had similar sort of journeys, Henline with less positional speed and probably out-sprinted by Swift Falcon. So I would be leaning towards Swift Falcon, and I probably lost confidence on Brad Widdop's runner for the Derby off that. I expected a little bit more. But Anthony has a good one.
Yeah, doesn't he just? So more to unfold there. Okay, our projections. We've done our accountability check. Your projections are for the next couple of days. What's going to unfold in terms of, I don't know, last bit of wheeling and dealing? And I mean, we're going to have a show on Thursday as well, but anything to start and begin the week with?
Barriers, I think they'll be overplayed from a market point of view for the Everest. I think there'll be a lot of discussion about the speed and potentially the lack of it, and whether those horses that are higher up in the market will get the opportunity to steam into the placings. We talked about Steffi. He plans to be midfield if he can, one off.
They all plan to be midfield if they can, one off.
When you've got your Bellas who can steam home, I think Bella would look to be midfield, one off. There aren't many saying, hey, look at me, I'll go and lead. And
well, I spoke to Rachel King this morning as well, actually. I hosted a breakfast that she spoke at, and they're not going to lead on Lady of Camelot.
Wow.
So we saw that in the trial last week. They tried to ride her with a sit. And so for those who think that that's the pace in the race, that is not plan A for Lady of Camelot.
So is I Am Me the pace?
I think so. She is the presumable pace. So if she draws inside, I mean, which will have a gun run just leading them up a merry dance. If she is drawn 12, like it's going to be wild as well. So I think at the moment, that is the only pace. And we'll go through this again on Thursday when we do have those barriers and that final selection in the field. But she looks to be the sole leader at the moment.
I'll put my hat on one thing, and I already know where you sit. I'll say the old guard will fight back.
Giga Kick, Private Eye.
I Wish I Wins. I know they're not old, but they're the old guard. And you think there are up-and-comers that might...
Particularly the mares. Okay. I think the mares will play a big part in the race. We know that mares have not placed in the Everest before. The best result was In Secret last year, who ran fourth. But I think we've got a particularly good group of mares headlined by Sunshine in Paris and Jolie Star, and I can forgive her for that second up run. We've seen the Chris Waller. Is someone calling you, by the way?
They are.
Yeah. We've seen that with the Chris Waller mares. Second
Should
up
I answer?
has been a thing. Yeah, who's just someone? Actually, it could be someone interesting. Is it your lovely wife to be?
Oh, you'll absolutely love this.
Who's calling you?
Hang on. It just rang out.
You
Pardon? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how Ali Mosley speaks to me off camera.
who are you with?
We're doing the podcast.
Oh no! Why did you have me on speaker?
Goodbye, Ali Mosley. Well. Good note to finish on.
Oh, we will bring you another show on Thursday as we edge towards the greatest day of racing for the year. Everest Day, Caulfield Cup Day. We'll have you all covered right here on So We Think.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.